Sonya and Sacha, for real.
You're listening to Brimbank Live on Live FM. This is the Sonya and Sacha for Real show, and we are back with our last segment now. Last week, we had an interesting show, controversial, with our friend Scott, and we didn't actually get to mention or commemorate the National Road Safety Week that happened last week across Australia, which is every single day is a different initiative. On one of the days, you turn your lights on to commemorate the people we've lost on our roads. You think about that you're driving, and you keep your family in mind, and so really keep your eye on road safety and focusing on being safe in the roads. Now, Sasha and I, are very close. Some would say that we're cousins/sisters, and we are definitely
100%
100% family. And even though we're not related by blood, we are family. And we have had, Sasha in particular, has had a very sad experience in losing somebody. And so we wanted to talk about that today. Now, this is a very serious subject for us. And this is really opening ourselves up and revealing, particularly you, Sash, something that's very sad that's happened in your life. So could you tell us about what happened, please, with your...
So back in 2011, my dad was actually killed due to a road safety accident. So he was a pedestrian actually. He was walking down the street, and he was just walking down the street on the side of the road on a street that nobody was walking on, and it was probably about 6 o'clock at night. And he had just come back from work, so he worked at Flinders Street Station, and he got off a train, and my mum was actually coming back to pick him up, and she was actually with a client at the time and was running a little bit late, and he said, "I'll start walking and you pick me up," and he was just walking as a pedestrian on the side of the road, and a girl came, and she was 4 times over the legal limit, driving with blood alcohol limit, and she was doing 114 in a 70 zone, and she kind of tried to swerve and take over another car, and then lost control. And then due to losing control, she actually just drove directly into a house. And my dad happened to be walking directly past that house, and she hit him, and he was killed on impact straight away. So I'm definitely one of those people that did drive with my lights on during the week. Last week I did that every day because we have big signs on our freeway, and I think that it's really important. And I've always been somebody that's been really conscious of drink driving, and it's kind of come. I've always been somebody. I don't drink drive at all. If I have one drink, that's kind of like my limit, maybe 2 at the absolute max. But I make sure that there's a big thing. It's something that's drummed into my head. So the fact that I've always been able to have that, and then actually experience that. And then on the flip side, I guess the other different thing about this is that, interestingly enough, that we were talking about juvenile detention centres, I've been fortunate enough, my career's led me to working in juvenile detention centres. And this young person, it was a young person that actually was the driver of the vehicle in the accident, who then subsequently went to jail because of what had happened. I've been able to work in juvenile detention centres and been able to work really, really closely with young people that have killed people due to drink driving, or driving under the influence of drugs and actually killed someone and then been locked up due to that. So I've kind of had like a very different 360 turn. I've been in the position of working with those young people and understanding the aftermaths and the effects that it's had. Then I've been the person that's working with the people trying to teach them, new ways of doing things. And then I've been the actual person that experienced it. So I don't think that there's that many people that have been able to experience it on so many levels, which is why I've been able to get a real understanding of what the impact that it actually has on people. And the impact that it's had on me is incredible. Like, I could not even measure the impact that it's had on my life, and not just on the impact of that particular time, how it's impacted my life, right up until this particular day, because my children don't have a grandparent due to that, and they know. And it was very interesting then explaining it to my children about how their grandfather has passed away as well. So there's been lots of things, and then the impact that it's had on my mum. And I can honestly tell you, Sonya, and you and I both know this, my mum passed away last year, and although she did survive another 12 years, 11 years or so, without Bernie, I honestly can tell you that my mum died of a broken heart.
Yeah.
Because
I
that
agree
was,
with
like 100%. If there's anyone that you can say that died of a broken heart, it was absolutely, like, they were, I refer to them as Ma and Pa Kettle, like that
that.
perfect couple, like that real perfect couple.
Yeah.
And so to experience that of what happens is just, you just can't even measure the effects of what that can do to a family. And it's really interesting because the effects it's had even on my own marriage and my own relationship. Like, I was about to get married, and I was, I was not long after just fallen pregnant, and I was living with I was living with a girlfriend, and my fiance, who's now my husband, was kind of staying, was sleeping over every night and that sort of stuff. And then that meant that I then moved back home with my mum, and then, and bizarrely enough, that day where he was living, he was evicted from where he was going. Like, they were said, you need to find another place because somebody else was moving into that house. And so we instantly both moved into my mum's. And not long ago, we were sitting around with a group of school parents, and we were having a dinner, and everyone was saying, oh, tell us about when you guys moved in together, and what that was like, and the first time that you guys moved in, and blah blah blah, and that the happy time of when you all got together.
Mm.
I'd never actually thought about it, and then I overheard my husband saying to somebody else, and saying, it's really interesting, that's not what it was like for us the first time we literally went, it's official, we're moving in together. We moved in with my mum under the worst possible circumstances. So what does that do? I don't know. What are the ripple effects of that? I don't know. When you start off your life together with such pressure, what's the ripple effects of that sort of stuff?
Absolutely.
Um,
And that's
and
what people don't get, I think, is that there's such it infiltrates every part of your life, and then in turn so many other people's lives. It's like that drop the pebble in the pond and watch the ripple effect go out, because it was everyone around. And then it filters into every single part of your life. You got married, you had a baby, all of these milestones in life that you expect your parent to be there. You want and need them to be there. Take us back to the night. What when
what
you got the
happened?
call, what happened?
So I was washing the dishes, and I remember I had gloves on. I was washing the dishes, and my mobile phone rang, and I saw that it was my mum. And there was one part of me going, "Oh, I've got to take the gloves off. Should I answer the phone?" And then normally I'd probably go, "Oh, I've got my hands. I've got soap everywhere." But I took them off and I answered the phone, and it was my mum screaming on the other end of the phone, and I was like, I couldn't understand what she was saying, and she just said, "Get in the car," and literally. The accident was only like, 500-600 meters from where I live right now, and from her house. And she said, just get in the car and drive down the street. And I went, she said, you'll see, you need to stop. Someone's died. He's dead. That's all she kept on screaming. And I actually thought my mum had killed someone. I thought my mum was driving, and I just didn't get it. Like, all she was doing was just get in the car and drive down the road and get in there, and you'll see, and he's dead. And I was like, what? And I didn't understand. And so I literally took the gloves and I threw my phone down, got into the car and drove. And literally within 300-400 meters, there was, fire, ambulance, police, and all of that sort of stuff. And she just said, he's in that. And I was like, what do you mean he's in that? Because there's this accident, and the accident was, there was two cars. There was a van, there was a car and a van, and they were both inside a house, and the house had a big brick fence out the front. And so they had gone through the brick fence, and as this girl was overtaking, she's clipped a van, and they've both spun out of control, and they've both gone into this house.
Yeah.
And so nobody knew he was there, because he was actually walking directly past that house. And so they've hit him, hit the brick fence, gone through the house, and both the cars are now in the front lounge room of the house. And so they don't know that he's underneath the rubble, because who would know that there's a pedestrian walking past? Like, they're concerned about the people in the house, they're concerned about the people in the car.
Yep.
And my mum's going, he's under there, and because she's looking, where is he on the street? He can't be there. And like, if he was, he would kind of be there going, this is huge. And so what had happened was, he was there, and then she's rang his mobile phone, and we heard his mobile phone. And so I've literally just gone over, and I've climbed, I'm on these bricks, I'm climbing on these bricks, and this policeman's just come and grabbed me and said, and I'm like on this car with these bricks, and I don't even know what I was trying to do. I just knew that he was under there, because we could hear his mobile phone ringing under this rubble.
Yeah.
Of cars and stuff, and everyone was really focused on the fact of this car, because she was screaming, she was drunk, and she was swearing and yelling and being really abusive to the police and the ambulance, and then that people in the van were very, very, very injured, and then there was the people in the house, and here's this, what they thought was this crazy woman jumping into the rubble trying to move these bricks and get in.
Yeah.
And so this police just come and grabbed me and said, you need to get back, and was really, really aggressive and rude to me, and quite rough with me. And I've literally just pushed him back and gone toe to toe with this policeman, and just like, I don't know what that, and just said, you need to listen to me. My dad's under there. And he's like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? And he said, and I said, my dad is under that. And then all of a sudden he's like, no, it's not. No, you need to move back. This is that. And I said, no, you need to listen to me and stop and listen to me. I'm telling you, listen. And he stopped. Then next thing, he's called everyone, and he's gone, this woman's telling me that her dad's under there. And then they've literally just gone, there's a person under there, so we need to kind of get in there. But they couldn't, because there was a full brick wall and a full car that was now inside a house, inside a lounge room. And that's like, they just, if we didn't even know, nobody would have even known he was there until they unpacked it and pulled it all apart to know that there was a person under there. So that made them then go, right, we need to get the fire, we need to get this truck, we need to start to move things, because we don't know what that was. And then they eventually did find him under there. And believe it or not, the next night, would have been 24 hours later, the next night. So I can't even explain to you what the next part of that was. I mean, my mum was just sitting on someone had brought out a chair out for my mum, and just that siren and those lights, that blue and red lights. Like, I just remember it was night. It was getting, darker and darker. I remember all of those lights, and I just remember holding my mum and saying, we're going to be all right, Mum, we're going to be all right. I'm just, I'm going to have this. And I remember ringing. She said to me, I've got something cooking on the stove or something. And then there was like, it's bizarre how you remember, like, I had to call someone. I gave this random woman my phone and said, you need to call someone and get them to go over there and turn it off, and then, calling people. And then it just kind of snowballed, and we were sitting there, and we didn't leave the scene until they actually found him. And so that must have been a number of hours. Like, it must have been a couple of hours that it was found, that it was there. And I just remember holding my mum. But there's this part where you're walking around. It's almost like an out of body experience, where you're like, I have to pull this together. I have to step up to this. I'm like, but you're having a million conversations in your head. I can't explain. It's an out of body experience. And then I remember, once they found him, they found the body, they then asked somebody to identify, and I was like, I can't identify it. And then there was a friend of mine was there that identified him, and then we were able to then go back to my mum's. And then I just remember my mum sitting in the kitchen, and then the house just pouring in with people, and it was silent. Like, people would walk in, and it was probably now midnight or something like that, and it was literally silent. Like, people just could not believe this had even occurred. Do you remember that bit? The silence was deafening.
Like it was yesterday. Yeah.
The
Well,
silence was literally that everybody was piled into my mum's kitchen and everyone was just standing there going, just silence. And it was silence for a long time.
it was.
Like no one could speak.
It was so bizarre because there were a number of people there. There would have been at least 20, 25 people there. And I remember your mum was just sitting at the kitchen table and she just wasn't blinking. She was so, deep in shock. And then there's just all of these people there and nobody was saying anything.
Mm.
And it was just, I actually remember getting angry because why aren't we speaking? And when I first got there, why are we not saying anything? What's going on here? Why can't we, what is happening? Why are we not talking? And then I couldn't think of
Because
any.
you've got nothing, because
That's
you can't, your mind can't comprehend what's actually just happened. You just can't comprehend. Like there's so much to say, but there's nothing to
nothing.
say because
Yeah,
you can't.
exactly.
There's so much to say, but nothing to say because
Yeah,
you just can't. And then every now and then someone would say something. It wasn't actually like you weren't allowed to say something. You could have said something, but
nothing made sense.
your mind was like going, I just can't actually believe this is occurring. I
Yeah,
can't actually believe that this is even happening.
yeah,
Like I think that as people were finding out, and as people were, I remember, people were going through my phone and ringing everybody, which is a scenario that I'm very too familiar with having, where here's my phone, look these people up and ring, um, and hopefully nobody will have to do that ever again and go through my phone and ring people. It's a
mhm,
scenario that I'm very accustomed to now, especially after losing my mum. That as people would rock up, they'd walk in and you'd almost be like, this can't be happening. I've got this phone call. It must not be true.
yeah,
I'm just going to go over there anyway. And then you walk into my mum's house and you walk in and there's these people just standing there. It was almost like we're standing there like zombies with this shock,
yeah,
the shock. And then the next morning it was a media frenzy, crazy of people wanting questions and media and newspaper and blah, 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 all of that kind of stuff. And we didn't even know details. And then, I just kind of, that's when I don't have any brothers and sisters. And that's when you step up to another level. Like all of us, I mean, I remember that night, the only time that I spoke was I spoke to the organ donor people. They rang me straight away and they said, somebody, I can't remember, I think it was one of my girlfriends said, you need to take this call. And I'm like, who is it? And they've said, well, he's registered as an organ donor. You need to make this decision now. And I'm like, hang on a second, like this only
yeah,
happened a few hours ago. Like it was, I think it was literally like we'd literally got back and they've said, and they've said to me, look, we've got his body here. We've been told his body and da 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 da. What do we can't actually donate any of the organs, but because of what's happened in the accident and the trauma, but can we donate it to science and da da da? And your mum needs to be the final decision. And I literally went, so can I get back to you on that one? And they said,
yeah.
no, no, you need to do this now. And I went, now? So I literally went up to my mum who was broken, like you can't be ever broken. And I just said to mum, I need to ask you this question that I need to ask you now. He's an organ donor. They want to know, can they have it all now?
Yeah.
It only happened 5.5 seconds ago, like it's the middle of the night. And she just said, yes, yes, do that. Like it's incredible when you're under absolute maximum stress, what you then go, I'm now pushing myself to another level. Now I need to push myself to the next level. And then before you know it, I'm up to my eyeballs in coroners and courts and within that particular, like the next day, I'm on the phone to the coroner's court. This is a crime scene, blah 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 blah. All of this stuff. Like there's no rest in it.
So that's the night that it happened, and everything's real and raw, and that goes on for days and days. And then you've got the funeral to
Well, the
prepare
funeral
for.
was quite some time. It was probably about nearly 2.5 weeks because of
Yeah,
coroner's court and
yeah.
it was being a crime and all of that sort of stuff. So it wasn't.
It was an investigation.
It
It
was
had
an
to.
investigation, so I wasn't able to do, and I had to get a coroner's report. There was nothing that you could do, and because my mum wasn't doing anything, she was literally just like sitting there. And I'm Italian, so there was 50 people a day of
Mm,
coming in and what was going on. So I literally did it all on my own. I remember going into my mum's office, and then my fiance, now being my husband, he said, "Do you want to come in?" And I went, "This is not how I imagined our life to be, where we're picking coffins together. It was not, you know." So I found myself kind of going, "Well, what do you think that we should get?" And he's like, "Well, what do you?" It was a very, very big wake up call to you, the rest of your life. The person that is very, very big,
Yeah.
fast. This is what it's going to be like. This is how we make decisions together, and all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But then, interestingly enough, that night, again, house was full, but it would have been probably about maybe 10 o'clock at night. It was quite late at night. The doorbell rang, and there were still people there. And I went, and my girlfriend went to the door, and she said, "Sacha, there's someone here to see you." And I went there. Now, I'm a bit of a matchmaker. Let's get the positives out of this. I'm a bit of a matchmaker. And this guy came to the door that was very good looking, very, very good looking guy. And I looked. Now, my friend is very, very single. And I just looked. And it's very, when I say it's like an out of body experience, the whole thing, I just looked and went, "I think I need to set you up right now." Like, I can't believe it. And he said, "You're Sacha?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Do you remember me?" And I said, "No." And he said, "I'm the policeman that, we had a bit of an altercation last night."
Blew
And
you off the bricks. Yeah.
yeah, so, he goes, "And I pushed you around a bit, and you pushed me back." And I said, "Oh my God, yes." And in my mind, I'm like, "Oh my God, are you single?" Like, what's this? Oh my God, no, that's just, I'm nuts. No, I'm not right. Anyway, and then, and he said, he just grabbed me and he said, "I've not stopped thinking about the way that I treated you and what I did to you. I've not stopped thinking about it. And I've just finished work and I just wanted to come, and I've looked up your address, and I hope that's not against the privacy, but I just wanted to come in and say I'm sorry." And he hugged me at the door, right? And anyway, and I just said, "Do you want to come in for coffee?" Because, being Italian, we had enough coffee and cakes for everybody because everyone brings over, a tray of cannelloni, cannoli, sorry, and cannelloni as
And
well.
cannelloni,
Yeah,
yeah.
and everyone brings over. And I just said, "Do you want to come over?" And as I've done this, I don't actually know. Like, he's walked into the lounge room, and I've gone in the background with my friend, "Copper, that's the copper." Right? You know what I mean? And then I've gone, "And this is my friend Joe," like, blah, blah, blah. Like, yeah. So, yeah, it was
I
just,
love that you've got some moments within all of that tragedy that you can look back on, and that you can sort of, you can actually have a laugh, you can have a giggle, because he was full of life and had the biggest
he
sparkle
was.
in his eye, and was just the cheekiest, loveliest man, that you'd ever want to meet.
Oh, and just, so he's not my biological father.
But it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but he was with my mum for a long time, and he really did step up as my dad.
Yeah.
You know what I
And
mean?
he
Like,
was like
really,
to be
really
the
did.
dad.
Really, really did. Like, did things for me that, was not, and never ever overstepped his mark. Like, didn't expect anything from me, never understood, always knew that he was not my dad, like, always knew. I mean, my dad was not, it's not like he was taking over the spot of someone special. My dad was, not the greatest man on the earth, so that's probably where my daddy issues come from. But he just so respectfully took on that role and came into my life as my mum's partner, but then, slowly started referring to me as his daughter, and, slowly started doing that. And I would kind of go, "These are my parents," and then, "This is my father." And, but, because it was that awkward time of going, "You're my mum's boyfriend," like that
Yeah.
weird stuff. And then, he'd start just being very, very kind to me. He was just very, very kind.
He was.
Kind to me, loving and kind, without overstepping the mark and trying to be that pushy dad in any way. And so then started a 2-year cycle of a court case. That was just that just went on and on and on, which I dealt with all of that and evidence and, oh God, it was just never ending of stuff of what that actually took out of me and my mum, which my mum didn't have much to do with it. Like I'd kind of never even really talk about it much with her. It was kind of like it was something that was just going on in the background in my life until we got a court date. And then when we got that court date, we went into court, and I remember you were there with me, and she had, I don't know how, but she had gotten a new boyfriend over the course of that time because she was free, gotten a new boyfriend, and that boyfriend clearly probably didn't understand the law very well because they thought that I was the one that was pressing charges, and I was actually not. This was a police matter. Like nobody ever said to me, "Do you want to press charges? Is this the choice?" This was like out of my hands. This was the police were actually, they arrested her. It didn't have anything to do with me of what my opinions were. And so we were out the front of the county court, and he was threatening that he was going to bash me. And next thing I've got, the security are looking after me and blah, 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 because this guy's like through the thing, I'm going to get you and I'm going to get this, like this is my fault, like I've done it to his girlfriend. And she had two daughters, I think, two daughters. She had two daughters.
Two daughters, yep.
And there was a younger daughter, and during the court case that we were there, the younger daughter was running. She would have been about 4, and then when we went out, this was probably there was a lot of victim statements that were victim impact statements that were read, and of so many people, just to kind of give the judge a more of an idea. And then during that course, they also explained about her history, and that was heartbreaking for me because they explained a young person that I work with that she'd had experienced so much trauma and such an awful life that had led her to that point. And then the sentencing was actually during the day, during at lunchtime, her family actually approached us and just said, "I'm sorry." Her family, which was quite an impact of being. I think that was beautiful of her family saying sorry, because I think that they thought.
Yeah, let's be clear, not her. It was her family.
Well, she didn't really have an opportunity to be able to do that because she was in the witness box, and then, didn't have an opportunity to speak to me at all. And she's a young person that's had had this thing, and she's got this boyfriend that was the biggest, Jesus, like that outweighs every bad boyfriend I've had. Do you know what I mean? Like
Pretty much stop them.
Yeah, let me tell you. I mean, there's one person that's had worse ex-boyfriends than me. Like that's it, this guy was a treasure. Anyway, and when her family had come up to say I'm sorry, the little girl was there and she was standing there, and I think she was like tugging on my clothes or something, and I just knelt down and chatted to her, and this little girl was 4 because she was telling me that she was in kinder, and I knew that her mum was about to be taken away and locked up, and her older daughter, was being taken away and moved in with some other family. And then the little daughter, I think I just started chatting to her and I said, "What's your name?" And then she smiled and all of her teeth were decayed. And I just remember, like, I thought, well, and another person has a big of a Coke Zero addict other than me, you know what I mean? Like, it was just, it actually broke me to think that this little 4-year-old, which meant that the abuse of what was going on in that family was so big that for some reason our lives just intertwined in that, and so that broke my heart. And I remember going home, and by the time the court case had happened, I'd gotten married and had a baby and all of that. And so I got home that night and I had given my son a bath and I'd put him to bed, and I laid in bed in the fetal position for hours, just crying my eyes out, crying. And I remember thinking to myself, I just want to call the judge and say, let her go, because let that little girl have a mum. That was what but it was out of my hands and stuff. And so then we went back, and then there was a sentencing, and so she'd gotten 8 years 8 years on the top and 5 years on the bottom, which really means like if you're on good behavior, if you do your time on good behavior, you'll get out in 5 years. If you don't, you get 8. And then that was kind of the chapter of that all closed, of how that does. I've never been angry at her, never, except for what. So I say never. I've not been angry because that was just how. That's another story in my life, another chapter in my life, and another story. There was only one time, and that was when I was about to give birth to my son. So I had a quite a difficult pregnancy. Not difficult, but towards the last trimester of my pregnancy, my son stopped growing. It wasn't growing and wasn't moving. So they'd have to go in on every day. Like, they'd send me in, 2 or 3 days a week until every day. And so I'd have to drink like 2 litres of freezing cold iced water, and I'd have to drink it really, really quickly, and that would kind of make my stomach really cold, and that would wake him up, and they'd strap these things to me, and they'd monitor his heart rate and his movement to get it, because I was literally like not getting any movement whatsoever. And anyway, over the course, day in and day out, I was getting less movement, less growing, the more it was. And so this one particular day, I've gone in and they've said, look, he hasn't moved for days. We've got a heartbeat, but he hasn't moved for days and he's not growing. So you're going to have this baby tonight, and we're going to induce you and have this baby tonight. And it was quite scary because this baby was just not moving. Although he's 12 now and he doesn't stop. So, and he's almost my height. So I don't know how that even works, But he was just not moving, and so being first baby and, oh my God, scared and all of that sort of stuff. And so I went home. So go home, get your stuff and come back. You're gonna have this baby. And I got home and I rang my mum and I said, Mum, this is it. I'm having the baby today. And my mum comes over and my mum literally loses her mind. She starts crying and screaming and says, I'm not ready for this. I'm like, what do you mean you're not ready for this, Mum? She said, well, I'm not ready. I didn't imagine being a grandmother on my own. This is not how I planned it, I mean, this was realistically, I think it was not even a year had passed since his death to when he was there, or just over a year. So there was a lot going on. Like, there's got accident, car accident, babies, marriage, blah, 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 in a very, very short amount of time.
Yeah.
And she said, I'm not ready for this. And I'm like, Mum, you need to get your crap together and you need to be ready for this. She said, no, I'm not ready for this, and I'm in denial, and you're not having this baby, and blah, blah, blah. And you got to think, I'm petrified because what's going on? Like, why is this baby not growing? What's going to happen? What are the effects of this? And I'm about to have a baby, and this baby's got to come out, and that freaks me out a little bit, right? So, like, there's all this stuff going on in my mind, and my mum chooses now to have her biggest mental breakdown right now.
Yeah.
On the day I'm about to give birth.
Yeah.
And so my mum and I have this big argument, and you've been witness to my mum and I's argument. Like, the earth kind of tilts on its axis when we have a fight. I'm like, that's it, Mum. I can't deal with this. If there's ever a day I need you to be supportive, and Mum's like, I can't deal with this. And then I said, well, you need to get out, Mum. I can't cope with this. And she leaves. And so pack my bags and we go into the hospital, and I packed my bags hating this girl, hating her, and thinking, do you have any idea what you've ruined? This is supposed to be the greatest day of my life, and I'm about to go into this scared out of my mind, and the one person I need by my side is my mum, and my mum is having a mental breakdown because of this, because she's just come to now going, I'm not ready to be a grandparent, and I didn't know it was going to be by myself and all that stuff. And anyway, and I was so mad, and then thought, this anger is not good for my baby, blah, blah, blah. And I think I meditated and went, I need to forgive you. And that was the only time. Anyway, I went in, and then about half an hour later, my mum turned up and said, I'm ready. And I went, freaking, thank God for that, Mum, because it's coming out anyway.
I needed you. I needed you here.
I needed you right here. So I'm really sorry for that. And that was my one. And then I let it go. But it was a very significant moment because I just thought, you've taken everything. Now you're taking this from me. It was almost like I was like, you've taken so much from me. Like, you've taken my wedding day. You've taken my, the fact that I've moved it. You've taken my family. You've taken all of my future and all of this stuff. And now you're going to take this moment from me now. it was
Mm.
like a build up of all of those kind of things. And then,
Yeah.
nothing like a bit of meditation to do a bit of a forgiveness.
Oh my gosh. And there's only so much forgiveness you can give before you break, and
And that was
understand
my
that
moment.
yeah, and that was, I mean, in the scheme of things, in the times that you could have broken before that, there were 100 of them easily. And I think I'm so proud of you and your mum. You handled it in gracefully and with lots of forgiveness. And I don't think most people would be able to have done what you guys did and
But the
continue
reason
to do today.
The reason is because of my background in my job, because I've been able to see what goes on in the other side.
Yeah.
I've been able to see the impact. So when the judges telling, when they're telling us all about this girl's past, I get it because I work with disadvantaged young people.
Mm,
I've been in those juvenile detention centres. I understand what's going on. I understand what goes through their head. I understand that it's a young person made a really bad decision. Adults make bad decisions like that all the time, let alone a young person that's been in there and been brought up in a lifetime of alcohol and, raised in alcohol abusive, in a world where people are drink driving all the time. This was her natural. She paid the price of what her family was doing because she had
absolutely.
grown up with that. So
Generation.
I could, yeah, it was generational that she was to just go drink and then go, let's go to the bottle shop and get some more. It was just that sort of the way that it was going.
Yeah.
So she definitely, and I felt awful that she was paying the price because at such a young age, she was now going to jail because she was doing something that probably her family had done a million times before and never got caught with. And yet she did,
Yeah.
you know.
Absolutely true. Thank you
So
so much for sharing that story with us, Sasha. I hope that everybody, understands why we went so personal and so deep today. And it was, it's just an opportunity, given that it was National Road Safety Week last week, for us to talk and for you to tell us about, what happened with your dad. And thank you so much for being so raw and so real with us on our show, the Sonya and Sasha for Real show. We
we've
don't
got
do
to
it
be
any other
real.
way, do we?
We've
But
got to be real. We've got to be real.
yeah, and look, I think a lot of people, if anyone's, if that's triggered anything for anybody, please call our phone on 131114. But we love you, Sash. We love you. We love you for being the Dalai Lama in a female body and and teaching us about forgiveness and the bigger picture and understanding that we're all human and we're all doing what we can and making mistakes. And you've paid, your family have paid the biggest price. And we love you, Vernie, wherever you are in the stars. And
They're all together there. They're having a party. They're having a
yeah,
party.
having
Go,
a
what are
good
you talking
time.
about this crap for? We're long and gone
Yeah,
now.
don't
You
be
know what I mean?
sad. Don't be sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, but thank you. And
Thank you.
and we love you
Thank you.
always.
Love you too.
We will end the show on that very personal note, and we hope you've enjoyed listening today. We will be back next week on the Sonya and Sasha for Real show. You're listening to Brimbank Live on Live FM. Sonya and Sasha for Real. Love you, Sash.
Love you too.
Sonya and Sasha, for real.